I know we were having a conversation before we got going about the competition online and how hard it is to, get people to see your work.
Right.
Where do you stand on creating things that audiences want to see and maybe willing to pay for versus creating work that's meaningful to you?
Right.
And maybe it's going to just be a little niche audience.
Right. Well, I don't think I've ever been any good at thinking in terms of let me craft something that's going to be a big audience favorite. Because I think that it's hard enough for the filmmaker or for me to get interested in a particular story anyway. In other words, I never felt that I was, even though I can execute any story, and I've done television, I've done things that were scripted, I can make that movie and I can make it hopefully work. To set out to make a film, that story has to be meaningful personally, otherwise I won't have the strength to go through the obstacles and all the no's, and it's not going to, there has to be something driving that for me personally. So, and I never thought I was necessarily skilled as an architect of that kind of audience, crowd-pleasing, super commercial movie. I just hope that, because I do love commercial cinema, there's plenty of commercial movies that I love, that somehow by that love will find its way into whatever story I'm doing, and it will contain those elements, but hopefully will be more personal. It won't be as machined. So, yeah, I'd probably be a wealthy man if I was, skilled in that, in that. But I think the best people who do make commercial movies, and you can just rattle them, going all the way back to Spielberg or Michael Bay, those people that do make those movies, that's how they think. In other words, it's not like, I don't think they're sitting around saying, let's, make a commercial movie. That may be on their mind, but their tastes are exactly that commercial thing. So it just happens that
right.
The audience, of course, is going to connect because they are that audience. And they're the perfect people to make that stuff. Otherwise, everybody would be able to do that. If it was simply a matter of like reading the instructions on how to make, then everybody would just go, yeah, I want to be rich, let's just do that. And it's not for lack of trying. Everybody tries. A lot of people try. But for me, I have to find a story that is valuable in some way to me, and then I'm happy to add on all the quote-unquote commercial components or exploitative components or any of those things that you find in a commercial movie, but at least the foundation is personal.
Right. I'm thinking of a movie like, maybe people disagree with me, but Into the Wild.
Right.
So it's about Christopher McCandless's
Of
story.
course.
And I hadn't really heard of the book before the movie came out.
Right.
And I didn't realize there was like this whole cult following for this book.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one that it seems like you wouldn't expect the audience to resonate, even though I think it's a fantastic film.
Right.
And I loved it. But it's a story, it's a very special story.
That's
that
right.
You wouldn't, it's not about, an everyday thing. But somehow it was able to resonate with millions of people.
Right. Well, I think
surprising.
you're right, because I think it's probably because the specific, the nature of the story about somebody putting themselves out into the wilderness to that extreme. It's not the specific act that everybody can relate to. I think it's the internal thing that the person is going through that people connect with. And that's what I'm talking about. I mean, there's something universal in those kinds of feelings. And I think that's why, for example, they always talk, everybody involved with Taxi Driver said, this isn't, we're making this for us, but probably no one's going to get it. And then it turned out to be this huge hit because there was a billion very alienated, lonely, angry individuals out there that went, oh my God, that's, I identify with that. So I think we'd be a lot richer filmically if the business allowed for more of those movies to be made, because a producer is not going to is going to be looking for something that is obviously something that people can relate to, but people are much more complicated than the way they're depicted in Hollywood movies. And so every once in a while, when something presents a reflection of that, if it gets out there, I think it will be successful, because people are like, thank you for showing me that I am represented, as opposed to it just being, a cartoon or, again, an advertisement for life.
So even something like Legally Blonde, which is it's a cute story and there's a great
Sure.
message and I enjoyed the film, but it makes light of someone that's sort of ostracized.
Right.
And in real life, someone probably wouldn't be, well, I'm just going to, get all dolled up and go in there and show them. It's going to be, a lot of pain behind the scenes,
Right.
but it's definitely showing something that many people have been through,
Right,
but in
right.
a light way where it feels safe.
Well, and that's bound to be the more commercial. I mean, if you can somehow illustrate those really painful, awkward things in a way that manages to be entertaining or safe, which I think is a really good word, because most people go to the movies they go to the movies, they take it like a tonic. They're not going to be, unless you're going to a torture porn, you're not going to be ripped apart. You're going to be soothed. So camouflaging or sugarcoating, or I don't know how you put it, real things in a Hollywood way, I think that's a real art and a real trick. And if that can happen, like for example, like for me, like I resisted Groundhog Day. Like when Groundhog Day came out, I was like, this is just a one-note thing. I think most people thought that. Oh, this guy wakes up every day. And then when you actually watch the movie, and Harold Ramis does this, and Bill Murray do this brilliant job of getting at a lot of real deep things in this very silly, gimmicky movie. And that was obviously their intent, that dealing with somebody who is bitter and had given up and doesn't give a shit about people anymore and has disconnected and just a user, and then through this twist of fate now has to like go through the stages of processing that till he becomes like a human being. If you made a straightforward movie about that without the gimmick, I don't think it would be that as popular necessarily. People wouldn't go to see it. But with the twist and the comedy, let me say that again. But with the twist and the comedy and the Bill Murray aspect, the whole thing, it becomes this much more pleasurable pill to swallow and a surprise in a way. And that's why I love that movie, because it's like, wow, I thought this was this superficial, shitty thing, and it turns out to be actually a quite complex, interesting movie. And I love that. I mean, and there are times where I want my message or my identification in a nice candy package. We don't always want it, rough.